My name is Dr. Abyss, and everything you see or hear here must remain here. After the explosion that eradicated the alien zombie horde and dismantled what remained of the human base on Mars, our priority was reconstruction. Mars, however, is not a planet that forgives mistakes, and the desolation we encountered upon arrival was a reflection of an abandoned place, where unknown forces move in the shadows. Amidst the dust and debris, a new threat was approaching. Pirates. I think the right word would be raiders, but that doesn't do justice to the nature of what is about to cross my path. They were more than just mercenaries. They were survivors of a peculiar kind, people who made deals with chaos and destruction. I was in my laboratory, immersed in an analysis of the data that had managed to be saved, when something caught my attention. The distant sound of broken engines. A metallic creaking echoed in the distance. At first, I thought it was just a shift in the Martian wind, but the sound persisted, growing clearer, closer. My first impression was that the ship was a remnant, like a broken toy from some extinct civilization. It approached slowly, cutting through the Martian sky like a wandering shadow. What caught my attention immediately were the many parts and pieces of other ships haphazardly attached to its structure, creating a chaotic appearance where nothing seemed to fit logically. The hull, a mix of rusty metal and warped plastics, seemed to be made from the remains of ships that had long met their end. There was no uniformity. The windows looked like they were from another era, small and rounded, as if from the 2000s, yet they were in a fuselage that resembled something out of a 2100 science fiction nightmare. A fusion of the old and the future, of what was and what could have been. The propellers and engines were like the noise of trash cans, patched up with tubes and parts that had seemingly been ripped from more sophisticated ships and used as salvation for what remained of the vessel. The kind of ships that were once grand, but now unrecognizable, almost as if time itself had left them behind. The visual was a clear representation of what Mars had become, a place of leftovers, where what was useful remained only because it was functional, not because it was beautiful. Watching from a safe point, I began to observe the behavior of the occupants. They were not trying to hide. On the contrary, they were showing off, as if they knew exactly what they were doing, or more, as if they were too confident to worry about any resistance. A nearly unsettling sight. I watched silently as they landed. The ship made a muffled sound as it touched the barren ground, as if the Martian Earth was receiving an unwelcome visitor. When the ramp opened, 4 figures appeared. They were men and women, all in tattered clothes, blending futuristic metal and neon with the worn style of the past. The aesthetic was definitely post-apocalyptic. Leather jackets, improbable mechanical arms, visible cybernetic implants, and tattoos that seemed to be records of past battles. They were a grotesque vision of survivors, remnants of a society that had lost its way, but still with a certain arrogance in the way they moved. Their clothes were a mixture of military wear and rags from failed civilizations, and their faces were partially covered by makeshift masks, as if they were trying to preserve some aspect of their identity in a world where everything had already been destroyed. The cybernetic implants in their bodies looked outdated and in some cases somewhat rusty, as if they were makeshift replacement parts from old machines, fused with living flesh. It was a distorted fusion of the past and the future, a degenerated cyberpunk aesthetic. As they approached the base, I could tell they weren't just there to observe the destruction. There was something more in their behavior, something calculated. They were trying to take advantage of the desolate situation we were in. The human base was an easy target, and this was more of an opportunity for plunder than anything else. One of the pirates, taller and with a large scar crossing his face, spoke loudly. "This place, everything's below, right? Should be easy to steal, huh?" His hoarse voice sounded like he was making light of the situation, but at the same time there was a tone of caution, as if he knew he was taking a risk. The woman next to him, a shorter and more agile figure with platinum hair and a worn leather jacket, looked around with a disdainful expression. It's been a while since the Earth Empire forgot about Mars. If they think they're safe here, they're more lost than they imagine. I stayed in the shadows, watching them as they began to scavenge the area. Their behavior was clear. They were hunting for something valuable, and from the way they moved, it was evident they knew exactly what they were looking for. I didn't know yet what it was, but one thing was clear. They weren't there for any simple treasure. They were looking for something valuable, and they had found the monolith. From where I stood, I could see that the pirate ship didn't have the capacity for a large heist. That meant they were probably interested in something small, but of great value, something that could be easily transported, the Monolith of Ra. It had left this imposing object with ancient technology to help us rebuild our base, but I had failed to learn how to control the device. I cautiously approached, trying to maintain my distance while watching the pirates. They were close enough that I could hear their whispers and feel that they were determined to take something. The leader, the scarred man, seemed to be the most calculating. "We found what we wanted, guys," he shouted to the others, excitement palpable in his voice. "We're going to make our fortune with this." It was then that I realized, in the corner of the room where the monolith had been stored, it was gone. What remained was only a mark on the surface where it had once rested. With a growing sense of terror, I understood that this was what they wanted, the monolith, and now it was no longer there. The pirates, as if they knew what I had just discovered, began to retreat quickly to their ship, without any resistance. It was as if they were fulfilling a mission, and the plunder was just part of it. They disappeared into their patched-up ship, which moved away from the human base with the same carefree appearance with which they had arrived. I moved closer to where the monolith had been, trying to understand what had happened. The monolith had been taken, and something bigger was now in motion. That's when something, on the horizon, caught my attention. The pirate ship was already on its way, but in the Martian sky, a massive distortion began to take shape. A colossal structure rose, something that shouldn't have been possible. It wasn't just a ship. The structure, as large as a moon, was black and blue, with the elongated shape of a warship. The atmosphere around it seemed to warp, making space and time themselves curve in an anomalous way. The gravity of Mars, already weak to begin with, seemed to shift as the ship floated, as if its presence was destabilizing the planet. I knew that nothing would be the same again. The ship wasn't leaving. On the contrary, it was stopped there, hovering around Mars, as if it were observing, waiting. Something was about to happen, and the mere presence of that thing was enough to leave me speechless. The feeling of helplessness overwhelmed me entirely. I had faced immense horrors before, but never something like that. The Monolith of Ra, the pirates, it all seemed like part of something larger, something unfolding right before my eyes, and I wasn't sure if I was prepared for what would come next. I knew, with terrifying certainty, that the future of Mars and perhaps of all humanity was in the hands of that colossal ship. But what was it really? A threat? A new phase of the game? My mind clung to the one phrase that was forming in my thoughts. The war that would never end has begun now. And as the ship remained still, I felt Mars' gravity grow even more unstable. Something within me, a deep and uncontrollable sensation, told me that the worst was only just beginning. Remember, this is just my diary. If you found this, it's probably already too late.